Well, shall we talk about fungi?
Please do.
We're not going to get specific because it is such a big world, fungi. Fungi is a kingdom in its own right.
Yes. Yeah, that was news to me. They're not plants. They're not animals.
No,
they're
animals
a whole
are
kingdom
a kingdom.
of their own.
Plants are a kingdom. And fungi are a kingdom. That's how big deal fungi are. We don't tend to notice them much. We use them all the time, although we're not aware of it. Like we use fungi in yeasts, and we use fungi for, well, eating mushrooms and
Antibiotics.
penicillin. Penicillin. Such an incredible story of penicillin. Alexander Fleming discovering this mold, as the Americans like to call it. and it's that mold that you get on bread that sort of turns bluish. Have you ever kept bread that long that you've seen the blue? And
It's possible I'm familiar with the phenomenon.
Yes. Also blue cheese.
Oh, yes.
It's the same thing. These are all types of penicillin. And they produce these enzymes. And when I read the story of penicillin, I couldn't quite get my head around it. The problem with it for a long time was they couldn't make enough of it to be of any use to save human beings. But eventually they managed it. Anyhow, the fungi basically are popping up in the highlands at the moment now. They love it wet. And autumn is the perfect time. And actually there's a little small boutique industry popping up here in the highlands for pine mushrooms. They're actually got people coming from the city and looking for these particular, quite distinctive mushrooms. They're bright orange, big and very ugly in my view. But they are edible. But don't try doing this yourself.
No, let's just jump in the middle here and say we are not wanting to encourage anyone to go out foraging. Point A, you're not supposed to take things from many of our wild areas anyway. But point B, you never know what
you don't want to die, in short. But it's called the saffron milk caps, and you do see them under, if you go to Penrose Pine Forest, for example, you will see these big orange mushrooms.
All right.
And they're the ones, if you're not sure, well, never go near them. But I tell you, the people who really know them are Polish people.
Oh, yes.
The Polish people know mushrooms really, really well because obviously Poland's full of these pine forests. And I've got several Polish friends who are absolutely wax lyrical about this particular species, saffron milk caps. But you must be very, very careful. The fungi they're not able to make chlorophyll. They're not like a plant. So they can't make their own food. So they get their meals by using, they have thread-like filaments. They call them hyphae. Hyphae. That's Phae. And they mass together and they form these great big masses of white threads. And together it's called a mycelium. And the myceliums just move around, usually underground. They may be on wood, depends on the species, but they may be creeping on soil, creeping on wood, creeping on living trees, dead trees. And they are basically exuding enzymes and taking in nutrients. So they are looking all the time for something to feed off. And there are good ones, lots, and there are bad ones, lots. Lots of bad ones. Good ones, you might have heard about mycorrhizas.
Yes.
Mycorrhizas are very important to gum trees, and very often these fungi will form an association with the roots of gum trees. And the fungi will produce the sugars and the waters, and the plants will take up the minerals and the nutrients. So they work together. And some of them actually provide antibiotics besides penicillin. So they protect a lot of the trees from other pathogens.
Fantastic.
So they've got this thing going, which is really very, very wonderful. But on the downside, there's some very sinister fungi.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one in particular, and I remember where I saw it, and it was in Robertson Rainforest many moons ago. And it's a fungi, it's a number of species that invade living animals.
Oh.
They invade, the spores come out. They look like big clubs that stick up out of the soil, quite noticeable, ugly, and they put down these hyphae and they invade living animals in the soil like moths and beetles and caterpillars and spiders. And they basically feed on the tissues of the living animals.
Oh.
And I remember this chappie pulling them out of the soil. And it's long and thin, bit like a finger, But then following on from the finger is another finger, and the other finger is the larvae.
Oh.
It's truly gross.
Right.
Really gross, but fascinating. So I find that pretty sinister, actually. I know there's a lot of insects that do horrible things to each other, but that one in particular really sort of
gave you the heebie-jeebies.
It did give me the heebie-jeebies. And then there's ones called saprophytic fungi, and they're the ones that are really, really useful because they break down everything. They break down the dead plant material and the dead animals, and they provide wonderful soil, basically. So there's all of those. And also, of course, there are truffles.
Yes.
Truffles, which humans seem to be absolutely in awe
Besotted
of.
with.
Yeah, and will pay big money for. But potoroos like them too, and wallabies like them, and bandicoots and wombats. They all very much enjoy truffles. And as we know, some of those diggings are really important and part of an ecosystem. Like when the animal is digging for the truffles, they are actually moving the soil, bringing the seed up to the surface, and therefore propagating the forest. So there's many wonderful things really to be said about fungi. I mean, they are spooky because they're so different.
Yeah.
And the one thing that's always blown my mind about them is that there is a chappie in Canada, actually, and he has got a contract with the US military because some fungi can actually destroy copper, really bad chemicals.
Oh.
They can clean up oil spills and maybe nuclear waste.
Good heavens.
I know.
Oh, that's really interesting.
It's so cosmic, man. Fungi are
it's good.
mind-blowing
Amazing.
stuff.
Yeah, and we really, as Lou said, it's a kingdom, and we haven't touched the surface at all.
Not at all.
So a couple of things that I would like to say as well about fungi is that, as I understand it, a fungi group is doing studies in the Robertson Rainforest because they've got such an amazing collection of fungi in there. We've got to go back sometime when we've got more than half an hour.
Yes.
And maybe with
Can we
somebody
go with them?
Yes.
Because we need them to tell us what we're looking at because there's so many.
So when you see a mushroom or a toadstool, and I should just take a little moment to say, Lou, can you tell me the difference between a mushroom and a toadstool?
You can eat a mushroom.
I was really intrigued by this because I thought I don't actually know myself.
I think I was told, but I can't remember.
Yeah, look, from what I can establish, there really isn't a particular difference. Some people believe that a mushroom is an edible version of the fruiting body of a fungi.
There you go.
And a toadstool is the inedible or the poisonous version or the toxic version. However, in the dictionary, it says a mushroom is a type of fungus, usually shaped like an umbrella, many of which are edible. A toadstool is any of several mushroom-like fungus, some of which are poisonous. So from a scientific...
It's a bit confusing, isn't it?
Exactly. Scientifically, there really is no difference between those two things.
And we should say that these manifestations, these mushrooms or toadstools, or call it what you wills, that pop out of the ground, They're just the fruiting bodies of a much, much larger organism underground.
Exactly, that's right. But if you see them around, and as Lou said, between May and July now in this part of the world is the time to go looking for them. Lots of people are really interested in fungi and doing studies on them and so on. So record any that you find, take some photos, and report them on Fungi Map Australia on iNaturalist. There's also a whole lot of information on fungimap.org.au on the web. And, you know, when you're taking photos, I actually take out a little mirror with me when I go out into the bush.
What a good idea.
Pop it underneath, because the fungi people are interested in, does the fruiting body, does it have gills or is it flat? What's it like underneath? And rather than pushing over the mushy to have a look, you can put a mirror underneath and take a photo.
Yes, because you really don't want to rub your nose in the dirt trying to look underneath a toadstool to see whether it's got gills or those spongy holes.
That's right.
Yes, what a good idea.
So we could talk for an hour and a half on fungi, I think, and we're just scratching the surface, but we'll leave it there for now.
Such a wit.